No music this morning, Chad?
Oh, sorry, I didn't have it on the calendar.
No, no, all good. Yeah, I think Lauren is gone for a few weeks or a few months. I don't know.
Yeah,
He's
good question. Hey,
he's
by
a
the
man.
way, can I do that as co-host? Can I have the music playing? Will it hear
Yeah,
me?
anytime someone comes off speaker, good or bad, it cuts off the default music from the host.
Roger that.
So yeah, so even if you just say hello, it stops it. So
I will pick up my responsibilities tomorrow.
yeah, that would be helpful. Anon, how's it going? That's you, Shannon.
Oh, that's me?
No, that's actually someone else, but he didn't come off mic, so we'll go to you.
Oh, Monday is gonna be like this, huh? Monday,
What
one of
have you
those.
what have you been working on? You've been awfully busy lately on our spaces.
Yeah, we've interestingly, for those who don't know, I own a creative sort of marketing strategic agency. We've been working with a couple of the companies from the Ego Death portfolio. So my goal with this agency when I started it last year was to figure out a way to really help buttress and support various companies working in the Bitcoin ecosystem in whatever way that takes shape. And so that's really starting to develop and grow. So we're very excited, and that includes products that are both on the market already and things yet to be launched. So being on calls with Lynn Alden and stuff is an absolute thrill. I got to tell you.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. Is that one of the first main Bitcoin companies you're working with?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of stuff on the AI side, but I have to be honest. I'm getting somewhat disenfranchised with that having a real peek under the hood, not in a super dystopian way, but just I don't know that I'm totally convinced the Jeff Booth version of the Bitcoin AI force multiplier creating a true, a true free market for the first time is imminent. I think maybe there's a lot of pain and a lot of stuff that happens before that, and eventually we get to that. I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. But I think the point of the story is I would much rather focus on the Bitcoin companies because I think that's a more interesting place to be and with my people.
So do you mostly operate word of mouth then within Bitcoin, or how are people finding you?
Yeah, completely word of mouth. We don't advertise. In fact, our website is password protected, and the reason for that is the companies that we work with they have pretty proprietary stuff going on, IP, etc. So they're very discreet, and so we reflect that back to them. But yeah, it's super interesting, and whatever I can do to keep making the tools in just more accessible, easier to use, gets us closer to a Bitcoin standard. That seems to be the running theme. So everyone's trying to figure out how to make it easier to use Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer transaction, rather than a sort of a higher planed philosophical endeavor. It's much more about how do we make this easy for people to use? How do we reflect the way that people are communicating, transacting, et cetera? How do we make that as low friction as possible? Seems to be the running theme.
So do you know Lynn B from I think it's a Build with Bitcoin, and maybe a couple of other ones. Like you two should meet because she works with a lot of VCs and new Bitcoin companies and startups and mostly in the Bitcoin space, from what I recall. She's down in the audience somewhere, but yeah, she just hearted, so she's even hearing. Do you know her, Shannon?
No, but she follows me and now I'm following her back
Okay.
because she sounds awesome. Yeah, there's another VC, a portfolio of Bitcoin companies that has sort of transpired and surfaced as a result of the work we're doing with Ego Death. So very interested in hearing what Lynn has and if we can be helpful.
Yeah, they have a podcast. I think it's the same name, Build with Bitcoin, and they always feature founders and developers and new products and new companies, and so you'll get a sense of what they do. But from what I recall, she comes from that side of the world in the traditional world, and has just sort of carried over some of those skills into Bitcoin, as you have. So it might be good for you guys to meet. But anyways,
Great.
let's say hi to Anon. Anon, are you here finally?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why every time I change from listener to speaker to anything, it like has this 20-second lockup where I can't do anything. It's bizarre.
Well, that's good information. All right, let's come back to you because Lynn's up here. Sorry about that. Hey,
All good.
Lynn, I just wanted you and Shannon to meet. Hearing Shannon talk this morning, I was like, oh, you guys should connect if you haven't.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. I appreciate it, Terrence and Shannon. It's great to meet. I've heard you on the spaces before, and I knew your background in creative and marketing and music, but I didn't realize you were working in the Bitcoin space. So wonderful. We need more and more, I think, people to help share, help make it easier and help the communications realm. So my podcast, Build with Bitcoin, we've done a little over 100 episodes now, and we focus on featuring telling the stories of the founders, of the builders of the tools related to Bitcoin use and adoption. So that is everything from wallets to underlying protocol technologies like Arc and Lightning. And we also feature the investors who are supporting them. So all the VCs that are the limit, very small amount of VCs that are completely focused on the Bitcoin space. Notably, Ego Death is one of them, 1031, Fulgur. And Jeff was our interviewed for our 100th episode recently. So we know the team well and really love what they're doing. So, what we find is a lot of the builders in the Bitcoin space are highly technical and it's hard for them to communicate what they're doing. And so having someone like you in the mix to help tell the story more effectively, more efficiently, is just really wonderful news to my ears. So great to connect with you, and thanks so much, Terrence, for making this connection.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, Anon, back to you. Sorry I cut you off, but Lynn was here and she's rarely here.
No, all good. I'm enjoying these prices right now. I think I bought
32?
one coin over the past week, I think, and then I've got another limit order set at 58K as is tradition.
And was that one coin a Bitcoin, I hope?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. Yeah, I know Nolan buys Caspa, so he came up here to talk to us about that.
No,
Disgusting.
sir. You got the wrong Nolan. But yeah, kind of similar to Anon. I can't believe we are seeing these prices right now. I know as like a young adult, I'm 25, when Bitcoin was at its all-time high in October, like it was great and I was happy, but at the same time, I had like a little pinch in my stomach that we were about to kind of run away, and it was going to be even harder to start stacking and hitting some of my stacking goals. So the fact that we're back at 69 or 64K, whatever we're at now, it's just a blessing, like especially for young people, because it doesn't feel like we're priced out. It feels like we have another chance to stack harder and get to our goals. So I'm grateful and just stacking as much as I can.
The pinch in your stomach might have been a bad taco, just saying.
Definitely could have been, for
Yeah,
sure.
you just never know. Let's say hello to Natalie and then Sean.
Good morning, Terrence. Good morning, Chad.
How's the pinch in your stomach?
That's a good one. I actually have an ultrasound here in 20 minutes, so thought I'd say hi and I was hoping for a lower low to get my 58K in, but I guess, the market does what the market does and people freak out and Bitcoin does what it always does. We just got to focus on the principles and yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, guys. So good morning.
Sounds
Thanks
like
for
you have
having me up.
that Prego out of breath.
Oh my God, I'm out of breath all the time. I don't know if it's like a thing for pregnant women, but I'm literally out of breath all the time. So correct, Terrence, you're correct on that.
Did you set up your wallet already for your new baby?
Haha. I have like Jason people reaching out telling me that they want to send me sats once baby is born. So that's just really sweet. I have one for my husband and I. So for now it'll probably go into husbands.
I don't know about that.
No, well it's we're a family, so.
All right.
But I'll
Well,
think about it, Terrence.
we'll consider that, but it'd be cool to have a little QR code. We can send the baby some sats.
You're very sweet. I will look to set one up.
Let's say hello to Sean. Sean, how's it going?
It's going good. Good morning, Terrence, Chad, Natalie, and hi, Lauren. I'm sure you're listening anonymously. It's interesting. I guess the answer you hinted at earlier is no longer 42. The answer to everything now is 32. So that's a pretty exciting change to the world.
Yeah, I guess the equivalent would be like if one of us, let's see, what would it be? It would be the equivalent. Let me see if my math's right. If one of us sold 0.032 Bitcoin and then bought a whole Bitcoin back, is that right? Because Sailor sold 32 Bitcoin and bought a little over a thousand Bitcoin. Anyways, it's all comical, and he did exactly what he said he was doing. So
yeah, I don't think our sale would shake the Twitterverse, but yeah. Other than that, the World Cup starting this week, so I'm excited for that. I'm not a big sports ball guy anymore, but I do love the World Cup every 4 years.
yeah, beautiful. Chad, back to you. Did you have any thing that you want to discuss today? If not, I can go through some topics. Or you, Anon?
Yeah, well, I did want to say good morning from block 952864. There, yeah, Sam had a really interesting space yesterday where he was talking about um, why people, why more people don't get this, and I think that's the topic I would love to get into with the room because it's amazing to me how I didn't get it at first, and even once I got it, I still have the technological hurdle to get through. But I'm just curious about everybody else's sense of this. Uh, the paradigm shift that went through there that happened in 2009 is just so seismic, I think, through society that it just amazes me, and I'm curious to everybody else's input if you'd like that as a topic.
Thoughts, Anon?
Sure, yeah. I also had a thought about the whole pregnancy thing as well. I'm just wondering every time a child is born, there's a birth certificate and that goes to public record in some way. It would be great marketing for a wallet company to ship one of those little sealed envelopes with, a wallet address and a seed phrase for every kid that's born with some sats with that sealed envelope so that it can't be stolen unless, someone rips into it. Just be a cool way to onboard people from birth.
Yeah, and just imagine what those sats will be, in 30 years or whenever, if
Yeah.
they ever even touch them. All right, Chad. Yeah, well, take it away. Let's dig into that, and depending where that goes, we can bring up other topics or not. But that is an interesting topic. It's always interesting.
So I'd never spoken with the gentleman that I met yesterday in Sam's Space called David James Riles, and he brought up the candle problem, which is a fascinating study from I don't know, back in like the 30s or 40s, and it was redone in the 60s. How once you attach incentives to short-term behavior, how decision-making outcomes get uh, they become poor, and as a result, when they studied this, they found that like it took much longer to solve the same problems if you have short-term incentives. And we see it with the quarterly earnings push in corporate America and other places, and that certainly is an impetus for this. But like the reality, I don't have a great answer to this. I mean, I can sit here and pontificate, but I don't really want to. I mean, my hope is to get people to jump in and say, what does it take for someone to see this, to really see it, to actually start to learn about it, to go down the rabbit hole, one. But two, why more people don't, aside from everyday distractions. It's like the paradigm of hard money. It's a literally 0 to 1 moment, and just people aren't picking up on that. And I'm just really, you know what's it going to take for more people to see it? It's an open question in the room. I'd love to hear comments.
I mean, I'll start off the conversation if it helps engender some thoughts. I think it just comes down to people being comfortable and not realizing or thinking there's a problem, because I think we have been indoctrinated so much into a system of you know climb the ladder, get a better title, work for your parking space, work for the corner office, get the better clothes, get the better car. And it's sort of this external scorecard that I want to say, even starting in middle school or high school, it's just it's all about the grades, and we're put through this system, and it's kind of this game that we play, and we get accolades, we get trophies, we're praised by the parents as we're growing up, like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. You did what? You're doing this. Now you're a VP. Now you're a partner. Now you're a, and none of that's just bad on its own, but it potentially distracts us from the problem of why are we trying to run faster and faster on a treadmill, and we don't realize, due to inflation, due to the money supply, and that we're just trying to chase a world that is just, completely stealing from us, obviously at different rates depending where we live. And so, it's like I was never a gold guy, right? Like so many Bitcoiners are gold people. They get it, and so they sort of understood the problem earlier, and I didn't, because I didn't know there was a problem. I never thought there was a problem. I thought that if you could save for a house and you were good and responsible and made sacrifices, you would have enough currency, enough money to buy a house eventually. And I used to, back in the day, I cringe now, but I used to look down at people that were like, oh my God, I can't afford a house. I can't do this. Or, I'm trying to start a business. And I'm just like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, you're spending too much on avocado toast brunches or something. I used to think it was things like that. And to some degree, there's some validity there, but it's I've used this analogy before where it's like, the window washer comes to your house and he's like, hey, I charged whatever $200 to wash all the windows in your house. Your windows are dirty. And you're like, what? You're looking around like, they're not dirty. I don't see that. You don't see that problem. And he's like, yeah, they're totally dirty. And you're like, no. And the reason you don't see it is, you've continued over the years to paint your walls wider and wider to allow more light in. You're now getting brighter bulbs. You're changing your furniture. You're doing all these things to make your place brighter and spending all this money and extra energy. But you didn't realize the whole problem was just your windows are dirty. And like Bitcoin is like the window washer showing up and saying, let me just wash your windows. You don't need to spend all this time and energy on everything else. And so I don't know. Maybe that starts the conversation if anyone wants to jump in there.
I think there's a lot of potential for kind of interdisciplinary investment people to become champions of Bitcoin that don't fully get it yet. Like, did you catch the TFTC episode with Chris Martenson that just came out?
I
Anybody?
didn't. Do you want to summarize and then let's see what Lynn has to say? Yeah.
I followed Chris for quite a long time. He's got this prosperity group that's all about basically being a prepper and independence and sovereignty, but he's all about gold. But I listened to him basically spout off the entire thesis for Bitcoin, that the money is fake, the economy is fake, they're lying to us, they're stealing from us. Why are we bothering with all these nonsense assets, buy real assets? But he avoids the topic of Bitcoin like the plague and doesn't understand it. And it didn't even come up more than once in the interview with Marty Bent, which is just so frustrating. And another great person that's also in his circle is Brett Weinstein, who constantly just basically falls into the Bcash nonsense because he hasn't had someone explain it to him. And I see that you've got Efrat up there in the nest. I know she's connected with them, and I think she would be a great ambassador to bring them into the Bitcoin space and fully explain where they're not getting Bitcoin, because they're like powerful nodes in the investment and sovereignty networks that are completely missing the message of Bitcoin because no one's explained it properly.
Lynn.
Yeah, great topic, and something that I think about a lot. My worlds kind of overlap different areas, and I think it really depends on where you're coming from, Terrence. To your point, like, and I live in Mexico, so I live in Mexico City. My community here, people inherently understand Bitcoin because they've or the problems that have arisen because they've suffered from inflation, from currency devaluation, from just rampant. But I also worked on Wall Street before, and that group of my social circle does not understand it. And when I left my venture fund to focus fully on Bitcoin, about 8 years ago, people thought I was certifiably nuts. They couldn't understand it, and they thought it's a scam. And so there's a lot of education to do. But when I talk to younger people, like my nephew's in college right now, and they have real pain, they have the sense that they will never get ahead, and he comes from an affluent family, but his ability to be able to buy a house, the issues that someone in university right now faces with thinking about what their future looks with AI. They understand that the money is broken and they don't know what to do about it. So I think depending on where you live in the world, I think depending on where your age is and how much you've benefited from the current system, especially in the US or in the Western economies, it's going to be a harder lift for you to understand what the benefits of Bitcoin are. And I think I was able, when I was first introduced to it in 2012, 2013, I immediately understood it because of my physical position of living in Mexico for a few years by that point and having experienced some of the challenges of a more difficult financial system for moving money around. So, I think place and age is a factor, and we need to approach each differently. Meet people where they are.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I also think we Bitcoiners have a problem of once we get into Bitcoin and we fully embrace it as a monetary system, as a new world, and we learn more and more about it, we get so we get so much into the granular weeds of it that when newcomers come in, we forget where we were and we start confusing them. Talking about whether it's BIP 110 or nodes or just the things that I think would have turned me off originally or made me think, this sounds too technical and that sounds like it's too much to learn at first. And I get it. The hardcore idealists and fundamentalists are like, well, this is the only way to interact with Bitcoin. This is the way you need to, or you're going to get wrecked. And it's true. I think most of us did get wrecked. But I also wonder if some of us have to partially get wrecked to understand Bitcoin. Because coming from the fiat world, there's still that gambler mentality because we're encouraged and incentivized to gamble because you can't really hold the money, so you try to hold the thing, and so you're incentivized to consume rather than create. It's like, well, I hold the money, everything gets more expensive, so I might as well just get the thing as quickly as I can. There's no point in delaying or saving. I mean, I think it used to be that way, our parents or our parents' parents, but to your point, Lynn, it's like they just see the prices going faster. I was at a birthday party this weekend, and it was half people my age, but also half very young, like early 20s, mid 20s, and they have no what's the word I'm looking for? They have no disillusion. Well, they're disillusioned that they could get a house at all. They don't even pretend to think that they could save. And these people are all well into the six figures of their salaries. They're all doing well, highly intelligent, highly educated, great jobs. They have nice apartments, nice cars, all of that, but they're also just going to brunches, they're going to DJs, they're just spending their paychecks because they really don't know what to save for. And I've had conversations with some of them. I've given some of them Bitcoin, for their like weddings or birthdays or whatever. And they sort of get it, but with Kalshi and Polymarket and everything in front of them, and it's really just kind of live for the moment. And I sort of don't blame them.
Even without the gambling, there's a lot of traps, right? Like going into student debt right now, or purchasing an expensive property, or paying off your mortgage. All of those were basically the advice we got growing up, that those were good things. That's good debt. Well, there's very, very few things nowadays that are good debt other than potentially borrowing and buying Bitcoin at the bottom of the market. But even that's pretty sketch. So it's hard to find any sort of traditional advice that actually works. And you can get stuck with a horrible albatross around your neck pretty early in life.
I think another issue is that people really confuse Bitcoin. They think of it as like a stock. And so it's just one other alternate investment option for them. So, you're looking at, I think this recent bear market, clearly, big catalyst beyond sailors selling 32 Bitcoin is just all the money flowing out into the AI opportunities that are presenting right now with the IPOs and SpaceX and things like this. And so, it's just, do you put your money in Bitcoin or do you buy SpaceX? And people don't grok the fact that this is an entirely new financial system because they don't need a new financial system. At least the traditional investors that that we most frequently run into. It's the ones who are using it day to day in the rest of the world that understand the full potential of Bitcoin, but it takes a lot of effort for somebody in the Western world, in the US, to really understand what the full potential of Bitcoin is. And so, as excited as I was the first time I saw the BTC sticker, running across the bottom of the TV screen, I think that's a mistake because people just think of it as another asset that appreciates, goes up, goes down, and right now it's been down, and so it's the wrong story for long-term understanding of Bitcoin. And
Lynn,
that's where we need Shannon. That's where we need Shannon to help shift the narrative and tell the story.
how many cycles did it take before it switched for you and you stopped seeing it as an asset like a stock?
I actually, when I first got into it, I saw it as a technology. So when I was introduced to it in 2012, I mean, I was in a venture. I had a venture fund, and I looked at it as the missing piece to internet, the exchange of values. So I think I got in at a good time, and it just rocketed up. And in 2013, I bought my first in 2013, but I did look at it like a stock because I'd been on Wall Street before. So after it appreciated 100%, I took off the table. And I mean, the things that we all do, of course, I don't hold any of that original 2013 Bitcoin anymore. But I think, I was focused on building my own business. So I didn't watch the price as much, but I was really interested in the technology over the years. And, but then honestly, in 2012, when I really had the time to kind of dive deep into what was happening with Bitcoin and look at the macroeconomic part of it, which even though my degree is in economics, I hadn't really bothered to look at that as much as I was looking at the technical potential of Bitcoin. That's when everything kind of came together for me. It was in 2020, and I just saw the fuller picture of what it had the potential to do. So, like everybody, it's a journey and it takes time. But I think, oddly enough, I first saw the technology and then later came to it from the economic part. And I've never been a trader, so I didn't trade in and out, but I did note in 2020 how much it had outperformed every other asset I'd ever touched, including venture investments over the years. And so I realized beyond the financial potential, though, there was so much more to it that was more important than number go up.
Let's go to Tico, and then let's say hi to Puncher, who I think is also probably class of 2013-ish.
Yeah, great subject. Thanks for having me and being here. Chad, I think in the fancy terms... All right, I gotta go. I got a dog.
Are you telling us you have to go, or the dog you have to go? I guess he was telling us he has to go. Puncher, let's go to you. How's it going, buddy?
Going good. We got on and off Zooms all morning. Hey, listen, I see no one up, and I want to have a conversation on Friday. One of the things about Bitcoin, now's not the time, but one of the things about Bitcoin is it makes you question everything, and there are no topics that are off limits. And it seems to me around a certain topic, the only crime is talking about it. So, this is not personal to anybody. But a friend of my family was murdered on Friday night, and I'm done pretending that there's not a certain phenomenon going on in this country that we need to talk about. And I want to talk about it with men of character and principle so that we can restore some things that need to be restored. Because if we don't talk about it, it will be resolved with violence, I assure you. And again, this is not personal to anybody, but this is Bitcoiners talking about a very sensitive subject that needs to be discussed. I want to do it on Friday. And if I get a lot of people saying, oh, it's not Bitcoin, whatever, I'll reject that assertion, but then I'll do the same topic and everybody can come over and talk about it on another space. I don't care. So that's enough said. If you want to look at my DMs and some responses and stuff like that, it's great. By the way, I'm not interested in a bunch of racists showing up. talking about a bunch of bullshit. But we will have this conversation as Bitcoiners. And if I'm the lightning rod for that, well, then fucking so be it. So sorry to be so cryptic, but I didn't want to sideline the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Is there, if you want to remain cryptic for Friday, that's fine. But is there anything you can tell us about this person or your family or what happened?
I mean, his name's Billy Schmidt, and like 50 other times every weekend or every week, he was coming home from a sporting event with his dad, and a group of black youths attacked him and took his cell phone, and he went after it, and they shot him dead in front of his father. That's what happened. And it happens a lot. And I'm done pretending not to notice it. Period.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry about that, Puncher. I did see that online. I didn't realize that was a friend of your family. Oh my gosh. I thought that was just
The
not,
family or friends of friends. I don't.
yeah.
I know who Billy is. I know he goes to Penn State. I've been gone from Philadelphia for quite a while. But my nieces and nephews. It's just we have to have the conversation. And again, if you come here with weak, low-level argumentation, like, well, not all, and what do and you're throwing around the racist term, then I don't, that low-level shit, that low-level discourse will be called out and won't be tolerated. We're going to talk like adults about this, and we're going to try to figure out what we can do to solve this problem.
Yeah, Punch. I look forward to Friday's conversation. I think there's an argument from my perspective, and I would love to hear what you have to say more as well. So look forward to it.
Yeah, me too, buddy. And listen, I appreciate you and all the guys. I'm not. This is not directed at anybody, so I would like to go about this the way we used to go about debriefs in the military after flying combat missions. Like, leave our ego at the door and let's just talk plainly about things. And I'm a solution-oriented guy, but I'm also a white guy. I reject the idea that you can't, like, I can't talk about pathologies in Black America, and conversely, the Black people can't talk about white pathology. We are Americans at the end of the day, and we're Christians. At least I know you and I are. We're going to talk about these things because we are not on different teams. These things are meant to divide, and these things didn't happen in a vacuum. And these things happened on purpose over time. And I want to get to some solutions, because not talking about it and pretending it's not happening is no solution. Period. So I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
I'll be there too, Puncher. I don't know why, but my parents named me Terrence, so I'm sort of honorary Black. Shannon, you had your hand up.
Oh no, I Punch. First of all, I'm sorry for your loss. That's incredibly sad. I didn't realize.
Guys,
I thought I had
I don't want
missed
to over
something, but
personalize this.
sorry,
It's
Punch.
not my loss. I'm sorry, Chen. I don't want to make it seem like it's my loss.
Well, but it is. It's
It's not a.
connected
It's
to
not
you.
a.
It's connected to you, and it's deeply painful, and it's bringing up other things for you. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is. I mean, fuck.
Well, I feel just as bad for the Black woman in her 70s who was murdered, in Atlanta, on an Atlanta public transportation last week. Like, it's not about white and black. It's about a problem that apparently the only crime is talking about it. And as Bitcoiners, we don't play those games. Period.
No, I agree. Terrence addressed it. He had said that I thought I'd missed something, but he had acknowledged that you were being cryptic initially, but now I understand what it is. And I think having Nolan and a wide range of perspectives is obviously incredibly important because it is nuanced, and we need to have that perspective. And Punch, thanks for raising awareness. We have to get back to a place where we can talk about difficult things. We just have to. And it's why I left the Democrat Party 2 years ago. It's like I'm sick and tired of not being able to talk about fucking tricky things. And it's nuanced, and it's not the conversation happening on X. These are people's lived experiences. As you said, Punch, these things they don't happen in a vacuum. This is decades of stuff going on, communities experiencing certain things, and arriving at a place. Well, anyway, it's a whole thing we don't have to get into now. But I'm happy you brought it up, and would love to hear everyone's perspective. I'm there with bells on.
Beautiful. Jordan, welcome to the conversation. We can continue with the same topic or shift it, but why don't we say hello to you first?
How's it going, everyone? Yeah, that's tough to talk about I mean, we all hear stories and have experiences with all that. So, I mean, it's definitely hard to talk about, but good that we acknowledge it and talk about it.
And I mean the prior subject that we sort of headlined the show with.
Oh, yeah,
Do you
Bitcoin.
have any
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
dirty windows, cleaning your windows. Yeah, I love that analogy.
Why people don't get it? What your thoughts are? What your experience is with others?
Yeah, I hear a lot of Peter Schiff going around right now, a lot of Schiff talking on Bitcoin. And so I think what Michael Saylor is doing is obviously kind of at the forefront of what Bitcoin is doing right now. And it sucks that that's kind of what everyone's seeing and talking about when it's like the technology and the economics and energy side of Bitcoin is so much more important and so much more interesting, I guess you could say, than what MicroStrategy is doing. But
Did
it
you
seems
read
like
the
that's,
article he put out? And this goes for anyone else on stage, where he sort of divided the approach to Bitcoin from these four different lenses, and many of us have percentages of all of those lenses on. And he thought that that's potentially why there's some problems and friction in the Bitcoin quote unquote community and not understanding which lens that they have on. I mean, I'm editorializing right now, but I thought it was a great article. Did you guys check it out?
yeah, I didn't read the whole thing, but I summarized a lot of it, and I think that's kind of my point with Bitcoin. This whole, for the last few years, it's a lot of different aspects to Bitcoin. If you're a technology guy, the tech in Bitcoin is groundbreaking, and if you're a gold guy and you've been in investments and whatever your traditional finance, you have a different lens to look at Bitcoin. And if you're an energy guy and you grew up in oil and gas and the energy sector, the energy side of Bitcoin is so intriguing, and you look at it from that kind of lens. And if you're just an average typical small business owner, or whatever, you have your 9 to 5 and you're just stacking sats, you look at it from a different lens. There's all these lenses to look at it. And Michael Saylor and what he's doing with strategy is just one lens. Stretch is just a financial product that, if you're a traditional finance guy and you have 401k and you're at the end of your career and you're you're kind of at the end of all of that, then that's a cool lens to look. I just think there's so many lenses to look at, that we all have these cool perspectives, that it's awesome to get on here with everyone and see everyone's perspective, because not everyone's is the same.
I kind of fell into Knut's take on the Sailor article, which was the different categories were shitcoiner, 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 and Bitcoiner. I think that I've learned what I can learn from Michael Saylor at this point. I really do value. He's taught me so much over the years, but I think at this point where he is and his Bitcoin journey, for me, I'm not going on that journey with him anymore. And that's not to say that no one else can. It's just it's not my flavor anymore.
Puncher.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like I appreciate Michael Saylor. Obviously, when I'm trying to orange pill somebody, his breed love series is kind of, you know, the second step after what's the problem, to just understand the history of money. I mean, it's a masterclass that he walks you through energy and just how we got to where we are. That being said, there's two takes I have. One is the positive one, where I think, look, this integration into traditional finance had to happen. It was going to happen regardless, and he is taking the lead on that. And to the extent it could ever be successful, he's probably the guy we want doing it. There's the other side of me that thinks these two systems are diametrically opposed and are antithetical to each other, and that over time it's not going to work out like, fully integrated. They both survive. And I don't know what that timeline looks like. So that's kind of my opinion on Michael Saylor. Obviously, the guy's a giant intellect. I don't think he's a shyster, as a lot of people are saying now, and I don't think that the TradFi guys and their perception of Michael Saylor is anywhere near accurate. But to me, Bitcoin is a separate thing from the direction that Michael Saylor is headed in, and I hope he's successful. I really do. I just would not recommend that a lot of people who understand Bitcoin through what Michael Saylor is doing now, I think have a skewed view of what Bitcoin truly is. That's a lot.
Puncher,
That's
you
right.
probably remember 2 years ago ish when everyone was talking about how exciting it was that industries were going to adopt Bitcoin and nation states were, that was kind of the final level to the game, I guess. You had the cypherpunks at the first, and then you had the average, individual entering, and then you had the whales, and then what was coming was the institutions and big industry and nation states. And once they adopted it, it was kind of like, okay, this thing's we're getting somewhere. It's taken off after that, and everyone was so excited. And now it just seems like, looking back at that, like it seems like most people are stupid. Most people are talking about this being a negative thing. And it was like, that's what everyone was so excited about 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Wait,
I remember them people hanging on to every little narrative that now when you look back, it's kind of like, did you guys forget what you were hoping for or what you wanted to happen? Like I remember, for months people just talking about like that there's going to be a Bitcoin ETF. Like what? You're kidding me. Yeah, you guys, there's going to be this is unbelievable. And we would talk over and over every day about it. It was like, oh, a TV show mentioned Bitcoin. What? And we would just talk over and over and over about that. And then it was like, hey guys, maybe Amazon's going to integrate Bitcoin, or will Microsoft we just hung on to every little thing that anyone outside of the basement and sitting behind their computer might adopt Bitcoin or start talking about Bitcoin. And then, remember the first time we heard any politician even mention it? And, all the posts that day were like, a sitting senator just mentioned the word Bitcoin. And we're like, what? Oh my God, this is and like now it's all here and it's integrated everywhere. And maybe it's because some of us have been disappointed with the crypto adjacency, or seeing that they're not really here for Bitcoin, or they're here for different reasons than us fundamentalists or idealists or maximalists are. But I still continue to believe that, Bitcoin is good for everyone. I think it's good for the world. I think companies need it just as much as individuals do. Family offices need it, institutions, universities, pensions. Everybody needs Bitcoin. And as long as we still have the right to self custody and operate peer to peer, as long as we still have Bitcoin as freedom money, and when I say we, I mean those who really do need it for that and for the reasons Satoshi created it, then I think it's fantastic. I think Michael Saylor, I think these companies, I think all of them have done well for everyone, including education. If the public treasury companies don't have a business model and they have to now start selling their Bitcoin, I think that's a great lesson for people. Tico.
Yeah, great input there, Terrence. It's a form of adaptation, whether individually or by an institution. And then to your point, a form of stewardship of the money, whether it's being, endowed or invested or saved. But I am a believer to what you were saying, which is the education and the culture of saving is different and the outcomes are different than the other environment or culture you described that we kind of grew up with at the past, which is consume your way to heaven, don't save anything, live for today, so to speak. So I think those two mindsets, they're kind of opposites. And I think to like the Nolans and the young people of the world, if they recognize the value and the security and the strength of saving, because we're actually trying to communicate that through experience, then I do agree. It's a net positive, and that adaptation is those who learn the fastest do the best.
everybody, a few things. First of all, back to Jordan's comment about cypherpunks. I discovered an interesting website called cypherpunkbooks.com/collection, which has a lot of interesting reading that is on that topic. Second of all, apologies to I know it's Sam and K Bud we're having some connection issues here today. So, please try to come back up, and apologies for that, guys.
Do you guys remember back in 21, 22, all the sentiment was exactly the same as it is right now, where Bitcoin's down. Peter Schiff was on, he's been on the same thing since 2013. It's like, when will this guy learn? But if you're new and you're coming into Bitcoin and you're hearing all this, like, oh, Michael Saylor's gonna go bankrupt, and oh, MicroStrategy, it's going down, we're going down. And then 2 years later, you look back and you're like, I could have got Bitcoin at $60,000. You look back now, I could have bought Bitcoin at $15,000 in 2021, 2022, and it just keeps going. Like it's not gonna stop. It's like the internet going away. Like people are gonna use Bitcoin, people are gonna run their nodes. Bitcoin's gonna move on whether or not price is 40,000 or 140,000. And so looking back, it's just gonna be one of those things where it's like, oh, well, the people who knew and understood and have been in this long enough to like make it through the storm, like Michael Saylor, when Bitcoin's $1 million a coin, everyone's gonna be like, oh, damn, yeah, of course he was gonna succeed with almost 100,000 Bitcoin. Like, of course, once the price is above 120,000, everyone's gonna say, oh yeah, we knew it all along. Saylor was the GOAT. He did it.
How many years did it take for Amazon to become like the sure made thing? Like I think there was 5 or 6 years there where people thought it might go under, right? So I do think there is some of that with MicroStrategy. Although I'm still wondering, what is the number where he could get over his skis? I'm not sure if anyone can think about what that would be.
And if you look at the numbers, Walmart just fell out of number one top line gross revenue as a retailer for the first time in over 10 years. Amazon replaced it. In my opinion, Walmart will never get that back. That is a form of adaptation. The market is deciding the more that we get into that participatory value. So it's like, yeah, the more people who participate, the more value that's created.
Sean, did you want to chime in here? I don't want to be taking up the whole show talking.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I didn't dig into Michael Saylor's post all that much. I saw some of the responses to it, just thinking about my own journey as well. But I'm wondering, where would Michael Saylor put himself in his own 4 category list?
I would say, and so for those who didn't read the article, the 4 categories are Bitcoin maximalists, Bitcoin fundamentalists, Bitcoin uh, technologist, and Bitcoin. Did I already say capitalist? Did I say capitalist twice? No, I didn't.
Yeah, no,
Maximalist, fundamentalist, capitalist, technologist. Yeah, so those are the 4. Um, I would say he's a bit of all 4, but he has sort of shifted, and he's even admitted, and he's sort of learning in real time, which I like because that does replicate, it does parallel most of us Bitcoiners that are learning in real time. And he came in, I would say, as a hardcore maximalist. It was just about getting Bitcoin, and he was talking about the fundamentals. He helped educate a lot of people, uh, a lot due to analogy, help understand Bitcoin. It's very inspiring the way he speaks. By the way, I don't know if you've ever read his iPhone book, but it's really interesting because he spoke the same way when the iPhone was coming out, and that's sometimes why he calls Bitcoin like the iPhone moment, or parts of what Master's doing. But so I think he's shifted because there are very few people that are in his position with a public company like that and can think things through. And he understands monetary history, I want to say, just about as well as anybody. I mean, the guy just is a master in that. And if you look throughout history at money, it always has been the problem for everything. It's precipitated everything, every war, the whole Game of Thrones. And it's like, any of us have watched Game of Thrones. It's like, I think it took until like the last season to realize, oh, it's a game of bankers. It was just a game of central banks. They controlled and owned everything, and all of these wars and the marriages and stealing the princess out of the tower and whatever. It all was just due to the broken money that was controlled by the central banks. And so him having seen all that, when finally Bitcoin was here, he said, this is it. But he's also kind of always had a chip on his shoulder, I believe, because he came, his class his clique, was Jeff Bezos, was Steve Jobs. Like, when in this during the whole .com era, when all of these companies, they crashed and they were sideways and then they went up, his kind of got left behind. And it's funny to see that MicroStrategy took whatever 30, 40 years, I don't know how long it's been, and now it's back up to where it was when all of them crashed, right? He kind of hung on. And he has found a way to refine Bitcoin, to create derivatives. He comes from the capitalist markets, so he sees that, and he's smart enough. I feel like he's humble enough to understand that not everyone is going to grab this magical elixir straight and on their own because they don't see the problems. That's kind of been the theme of this show. But the problem that they do see for them becomes nominal, becomes retirement, becomes their portfolios, becomes their interaction with just passive investing. And I know a lot of us Bitcoiners laugh at that because we see beyond that. But what a great way for him to be doing that. And then of course other companies like Strive following them. So now, will it work? Will it implode? Do they have risk? Are they depending on Bitcoin, of course, going up and to the right continuously? Yes, but I don't think that they're wrong with that overall thesis. It'll just be, how greedy do they get and how much can they back off when they need to? And as we as individual Bitcoiners have seen over time, it really just comes down to Bitcoin. Like, if all of these institutions, if all of these companies, if all of these fancy things, all they are doing is they're taking Bitcoin and then trying to do something fancy with it. They can't do their fancy thing without the Bitcoin. So we can just go get the Bitcoin. And that's what I think is beautiful about these four categories, that we can sort of ride in all of them. But I think the point of it for him was that, look, if you are a Bitcoin technologist, right? And so I think this is sometimes the problem we see with like the core developers or engineers. They like the tech, and it's why we see people get distracted by crypto, because yeah, you can go over to Ethereum or these other places with fancy smart products and smart contracts and whatnot. And if you're a technologist, you like it because you're like, oh, because I can do this, I can do that, right? And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, but that's where they get distracted. And I think that's his point. And same with the Bitcoin capitalists. Like, those people are important too, but they just see it as a capital market. They just see it as a trade for more fiat, not as an escape, where us maximalists or fundamentalists do, or who want to help support it as freedom money.
Terrence, can we go to
One,
State because he had his hand up, and then Tico?
Well, I had it up and then I took it down. So I'm coming at this. First of all, it's easy to kick Bitcoin when it's down. If Bitcoin was pressing 125, 130, we wouldn't be having the conversation. But I come at this as somebody who was a Bitcoiner but is no longer one, and I can kind of offer to you why I'm not. And I think part of the problem for me is Sailor. I see a lot of people praising Sailor, but I see Sailor as the problem. And I always thought back in I'm a class of 2017, but I had read The Creature from Jekyll Island back in 2002, and then House of Morgan in 2003. So I understood this money problem that was building, and I understood debt. And then 2008 comes along and we have the great financial crisis and whatnot. So I understood what Bitcoin was all about. But when I started hearing about it, Bitcoin is supposed to be this currency for the world. It was for everyone to participate in. And all of a sudden it became basically a United States thing of wealthy investors. And I just had difficulty once I learned that approximately 18% of the supply is lost. And now we have somebody who's coming in, an American entrepreneur, not a businessman, and he's going to start taking up 4.5%. To me, if you're a large investor like a central bank or just a big bank, do you really want those economics behind what you have? And for me, it just doesn't make sense. Um,
Hey, State, can I ask you a question? What what you mentioned central banks being interested? Why would they be interested if the the dynamics that you just outlaid? How do central banks play into this, in your estimation?
I'll be honest, I don't think they do. I don't think they're interested. I don't
Oh, it
think they're.
sounded like you thought they might,
Well,
and
no,
that wouldn't be.
I was going back to the problem with what we have with the runaway fiat, and you can see my pin post. The M2 money growth is just continuing to climb, and that is the underlying issue with fiat. Um, Another issue I have is a lot of it. I'm old. I'm 55 years old, and there's this thing that's called
I'm older.
if the girl isn't into you, she just isn't into you. And I'm starting to think that if Bitcoin is supposed to be this thing, trust me, the world in big finance has seen Bitcoin. It's not like you need more people to see Bitcoin. It's there. They've seen it. They've seen this sport, and they're right now they're not doing anything with it. So I'm thinking, if
Well, you're making a lot of assertions, and I kind of want to deal with each one of them.
I under I,
But I'm still trying. I still don't understand. You said you were into Bitcoin for what sounded like reasons that sound like why a lot of us are into, own it. But then something happened with Sailor and some lost coins. I still don't understand your argument as to why Bitcoin is no longer the thing that you were first attracted to.
I was interested in it because of the technology. You have to understand, I was a miner also. At one point, I had 26 S19Js buzzing. So at
Okay,
$8,000,
right.
so
But so what?
well, I'm just trying to say that I understand I'm going to get pelted and absolutely hate it. And I hope this
No, no, no.
space.
You're not going to get pelted, dude. You're
Okay,
not going to
all
get
right.
pelted. I'm trying to
I'm just trying to
understand.
help people take on another side because I am a little bit like Peter Schiff, hopefully just a little bit nicer. I understand the money problem. That's what got me into Bitcoin. I thought, I understand this. It's a fixed supply, 21. I can see that nonlinear curve. This is going to be great. And then I started learning that there had been some lost coin. To me, it just doesn't seem like if you have 18% of your supply missing, that's never going to be touched. It just seems like it's flawed from the start, almost as
Why? Why? Can you just drill down on that? Why? Why? Because there's not 21, and let's just pick a number and say there's
okay.
17 million. Why does that matter to you?
Here's a good example. Take NASA, for example, when they started building the first supersonic jet. Imagine that it's got this engine on it or this fuel tank, but all of a sudden 18% of the supply they can't use. But the thing still goes supersonic and it flies fine. It's just that there are some stuff that's not 100% utilized. It's just you just can't use it.
Well, it's gone. The existing
Yeah,
system is now 18 million, but it's divisible
yeah. I
down to. I'm not making the. I'm just not seeing the argument at all.
it's I don't know. It's just okay. If you're a bank, if you're like a I don't know, a China or a government, could, do you think there could be a risk that somehow that 18% could come out? I think it's very low, but it's not exactly like central banks and governments are actually jumping on this. In fact, Germany dumped theirs in the summer of 2023 to
Well, they're
figure.
stupid. El Salvador's not dumping theirs, and they're smart. I mean, countries just like individuals. You got some that are dumb, and you got some that are smart. Some
Yeah,
make bad decisions, some
Most
make good
people
decisions.
are
yeah,
stupid.
Most
but price has gone largely sideways from that. Uh,
Wait, what? Wait, time out. What do you mean price has gone largest side? I bought Bitcoin at $35. What do
I'm
you,
talking about Germany. Um,
so from when they sold it, it's gone sideways?
yeah, it hasn't necessarily gone to the two to
Well,
four
was it
x.
126,000 less than 8 months ago?
Yeah, so I don't think Bitcoin's going to go to zero. I just think it's. I just thought it was flawed to me. You have
But
one one
I
Amer-
get that. I get you thought it was flawed, but you're not making the argument as to what's flawed about it. Like, instead of analogies, can you just drill into, okay,
If you
we
were
started at 21 and now we're at 817. It's flawed because
the
some coins
coins
were
are the
lost.
coins are lost. Yeah,
Okay, but why is that flawed? Why is the system flawed?
Hunter, I think can I just jump
Yeah,
in?
yeah, sure, Robert. Yeah.
I think I get where he's coming from, which is there is a risk. We have all kind of, or the market has priced in that those coins are gone, right? They're Satoshi. They're not really probably going to move. They kind of don't exist. I think what he's saying is if they start to move, and that perception that the market is priced in that they can't be sold, right? If they start to get moved, it's like, oh, Satoshi is not dead. Maybe they're about to get dumped, and whatever percent of the total market cap, right? I think that's what he's trying to say, which does make a little bit of sense, but
It
I
Well,
I,
is that
I
what
don't think the market.
it
is
does.
that correct? Is that right, State?
Yeah, that's along the lines. Also, with what Peter's talking about, what happens if Saylor gets into trouble? We're, the market's already getting a little bit in a tizzy about what happens if Saylor does. You have an American investor who someday decides to start getting rid of as much as 4% of the supply. A lot of people are dead set that he's not in trouble, and I happen to believe that he's not in trouble. But it's just out there. In other words,
Well, that's supply and demand, right? I mean, that is a free market. I don't. What's the flaw in that?
because it's not worldwide. I think of the 6 billion people in the world.
State, we're having trouble hearing you. Can you get closer to the phone?
Talking to me?
Hey, State, are you still there? If
Yeah, can you hear me?
yeah, now we hear you.
Okay, yeah. Um, to me, I just don't see that Bitcoin is a global thing. To me, see it as an American thing, and I see it closer to a Nasdaq stock where you have one large investor like Warren Buffett. It is
Well,
not.
are you unfamiliar with like the adoption of Bitcoin in the global South and in Africa? And I mean, have you looked into it, or are you
Yeah, I
just
have.
making an assertion?
No,
So
I
it's
have.
not.
I've
So
been with.
they're not using it in
Yeah.
these places where
Hey,
they're
punter. Yeah,
unbanked.
you're gonna win everyone. I'm just trying gonna try. You're gonna. You got me.
I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying to
No.
understand.
Yeah,
Actually,
I understand. Um, uh, so I just think it's flawed. I think Sailor does need to get blown out. Another thing is that I always thought that one of the reasons for Bitcoin was to acquire as
but
much.
State, I'm sorry. Sid, I'm sorry. You said you didn't think he was going to get blown out, but that he needs to get blown out.
Yeah, right. I'm with Schiff on that. Absolutely. I think if
Why? Why does he need to? Can you articulate to me why he needs to get blown out for Bitcoin to
it's a
survive?
little bit like the Hunt brothers. You have somebody who's not necessarily cornering the
Well,
market.
they changed the rules from the Hunt
Yeah,
brothers.
I
They just
understand.
changed. Well, you can't change the Bitcoin rules.
Okay. I'm not gonna get around your argument. You win that one. But what I want to say is um, I thought the point with acquiring Bitcoin is to gather as much fiat as you could and then go into fiat. I see a lot of people sitting in Bitcoin in a cost opportunity waste, and they're waiting for this cruise boat to take off to the pearly, beautiful, heavenly seas, and it's just not going anywhere. Meanwhile, you have.
Are you familiar with the term network effect? Does that mean anything to you?
I understand Metcalf law perfectly, and that brings me to another one.
Right.
Look at the Lightning Network. That is not a Metcalf law. It is going sideways for
Well, what do you?
past 3
Well, I
years.
mean, that's an assertion, but
No,
I
no, no.
would
That's
say that
that's a fact. I can post the
that's a
picture.
fact.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, it's brand new, so how do you know it's a fact? How do you?
Because they're
I mean, the adoption of Bitcoin is quicker than the internet. Would you say the internet was? Would you say the same thing about the internet in 1992?
Yeah, because
It's
the internet had already taken off on the S curve by now. The Lightning Network
well, wait,
has
what?
held largely
Dude,
at
dude,
five
dude, dude,
thousand.
dude, dude.
Has
Come on,
largely
you're
held.
making
Uh,
state. I can only you're making assertions without any kind of articulation of the backup. You sound like Peter Schiff.
okay, Puncher. I've been. You're going to win everyone, my man.
Can I
Just
interject a hypothetical? Just for
Sure.
to think, I'm thinking about State's
I'll
argument,
step down.
which the way I'm understanding State's argument is
State, you
that
don't
there's
have to step down. State, you don't have to play victim, dude. I'm
yeah
just
yeah
telling
yeah
you.
yeah hang around. So to me, State's argument is that there's supply concentration problems in Bitcoin, which makes it an unattractive investment for serious money. And so if we just take that to an extreme, Puncher, I want to know your thoughts. What if Saylor was able to gobble up, say, 20 of the 21 million Bitcoin? Let's just say in an extreme hypothetical, he was able to do that. How would that affect your outlook on Bitcoin as an investment? or
I
as
want
Well,
to
its
buy
I'll
ability
it.
to
bring
be
it to
globally
you. He's
adopted.
not getting mine. So how do you assert that he's
No,
getting
no, no.
21 million?
As on its prospect to be globally adopted as a serious asset,
So
reserve
at no
asset.
price can anybody buy Bitcoin, and he would own all of them and never move them. That's your assertion.
Yes.
Sailor,
The
actually,
right, we got to take
I
it to an
mean, I don't.
extreme
What
to
if we
make
get
an
hit by a
example.
meteor and everybody dies?
No,
Then
no, no,
what?
no, no. Come on, come on. I'm
No,
just
no.
asking
I'm
you.
dead
I'm
serious.
ask the whole
You're.
point of what I'm asking, Puncher, is there is there a point where Sailor is able to gobble up so much Bitcoin that other serious money, global money, looks around and goes, I don't want to hold an asset where a guy holds 10, 20, 25% of
yeah,
it
yeah.
and can
Sailor
dump
actually
on the
addressed
market whenever he wants.
when they asked him, "Do you
It,
want to buy all of it?" He said, "No, I don't want to buy all of it because then it would be worthless." So he's highly aware of that problem, and I think he's addressed it. I don't think it's actually a real thing. I think it's a hypothetical. But yeah, there would be a certain point where owning too much of it is a centralization risk for sure.
okay, so that's a reasonable thing to debate then. And
It can.
regardless of what Saylor says, he is accumulating Bitcoin faster than any person on Earth. And to me, I don't see any end in sight for him, right?
Well, there's
Like,
a whole
what?
bunch of Bitcoin maxis who are never selling their Bitcoin. So how does he get their Bitcoin?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying.
Well, you are. You're making an assertion and putting bounds around an argument, and then I say it can't happen, and you say,
No,
well,
no,
that's not
no.
what I'm saying.
I'm just saying, how long do we cheerlead one single person to accumulate an outside portion of of this asset? How long? Like, at one point, does it become a problem?
Who's cheerleading? Well, first of all, I'm not cheerleading any such thing. I already gave my opinion of Sailor. Um, like, there's nothing I can do about it. This is not like a control system. You're talking about a centralized system where maybe we write some rules where he can no longer do that. Obviously, the safety valve for all of this stuff is a much higher price in fiat, but I'm not interested in owning fiat at all, as are most
And
Bitcoin maximalists.
And Puncher, there's another side to what we were talking about. I kind of agree extremes inform the means. So, thinking it through, what if he owns 20%, 50%? I do think that's instructive, at least in terms of the concentration risk. But on the other end, there is a bullish case to be made, right? Like you have a public company, for example, my family business is a public company and it is very, very closely held, right? The family and relatives and whatnot, we own a very large share of the company. To some investors, that is actually seen as an attribute, right, and a strength. So I think the difference, though, is that people look at Saylor and they see, oh, he owns whatever it is, 4 or 5%, trying to get to 10 or 15 or whatever it is, and he's using leverage. He's got this potential Ponzi kind of dynamic, right? At least that's what a lot of people think. They're looking at that closely held share not as an attribute, not as a strength, but as a potential liability, right? Because regardless of what the MSTR people that spend all day diving into the MSTR balance sheet and STRC and all of that, all the intricacies, the broader sentiment, the broader perception within the market is that he is doing something high risk. He's using leverage, and that there's a potential for that to get blown out. And I think that is a legitimate risk. But for
Well,
4%,
let's keep going with that. Let's just say he is taking outside risks, and you make an assessment that number one, you definitely don't want to own any of his Bitcoin derivative products for sure. But then you're making the extension that you don't want to own Bitcoin either, which is
well, yeah,
fine. You can make that you can make that assessment that the risk of Michael Saylor owning 4% is so high that I don't want to own Bitcoin, which is fine. My question to you is, what then do you own in a failing fiat
yeah.
system
So
other than Bitcoin?
yeah, I mean, the way I would answer it, the way I look at it is, okay, I think that's a valid criticism, a valid risk, right, for the medium term future, that he gets blown out and there's forced selling or whatever, right? If we can just kind of agree that that is at least what the market believes, then the way I would look at that is, okay, that I think is why he was kind of saying, he needs to get blown out because, say it happens, right? Regardless of how low probability most people in here would say that is, just say it happens. 4%, his entire stack gets dumped on the market, liquidated. Well, we absorb it, right? The price will go down for sure. It'll clear the order book pretty quickly, but we'll absorb it, right? And then that leverage rinse, just like we have to rinse leverage with perps, right? It's the same kind of thing where, okay, that, or the S&P 500 on Friday, right? Once that leverage is rinsed, then we absorb it, we buy it, maybe a lower cost, but then the price can recover, and then you have removed the market over a longer period of time. It's a short-term risk maybe, but it's first, if you view that as kind of the end all be all, like you said, that is going to completely stop you and prohibit you from buying any Bitcoin, then you just have a really high time preference, right? Because if you can extend your time preference out to a year, 2 years, 5, 10, 15, then you look at it as, oh, well, that would be a great buying opportunity, right? So I think I think he has a point in the short term, and I do think that the market believes that Saylor is, taking undue risk and, kind of a potential liability within the Bitcoin ecosystem. I do believe that that's what the market perceives, the kind of institutional money and the quote unquote smart money and all them. But, I kind of would like to see him get rinsed, like in my opinion, I agree. I agree with Schiff. I think it'd be a good thing, constructive, if we were able to distribute those coins out of someone that I don't think personally, is doing, is being prudent, I guess we could say. And I think it'd be a good thing to get that, those coins distributed to people like us. I don't think that's like a horrible thing to say.
I agree completely, Robert. And I do have to jump, and I know Tico's going to say something way smarter than me. But again, Sailor's not acting in a vacuum, and I would position Sailor's risk, as articulated, against what Darkside articulates with the derivatives complex being built around Bitcoin and his big long thesis. I think, which is I don't know that they're mutually exclusive events. Like first, Sailor's got to get liquidated, and then all these shorts who then would pile on and try to, be long, have all these outsized positions in short Bitcoin. Um, you might see some kind of gamma squeeze. Look, I don't know the order of operations here. I don't really care, quite frankly. But if you're personally assessing risk in Bitcoin from that lens, I don't blame you. Don't buy Bitcoin. I just think that that's not my base case. And
Roger.
How do you feel about sort of the emotional influence that Saylor projects over the Bitcoin price with, the recent dive? People are saying, oh, it's capital rotation. He said it was capital rotation, but it's also pretty convenient that he sold at the exact same time as the dive, which I think had an emotional effect. And then he bought it back at the bottom. And I know it's a meaningless amount, but it's also kind of a precedent set of the same sort of front running and selling of a narrative that he controls. So do you see any concern moving forward about that?
Well, I'll just say that, for those that were shocked that he sold a little bit of Bitcoin, he said he was going to do it, and he said why. The S&P had outlined some things, apparently I'm not privy to, that would get him into S&P inclusion. I think that that's one of his major goals. So he's trying to do those things, like deleverage a little bit. So I mean, it's not shocking to me. Look, all of these things are layered. Everybody wants to point to one thing all the time and say this is the reason why X happened, and that's not. It's not how a very complex markets work. But I do have to jump, guys. It's a great conversation. I apologize. I do have to jump. And Tico, go ahead, buddy.
I read the article. I thought it was fantastic. And Terrence, to your point, I think he started out as a maximalist because he recognized the limitation of capitalism and of fiat, right? So that's the emotional component. But now, as a capitalist, he's doing what most capitalists do, which at the end of the day, if everybody recognizes that derivatives equals paper pushing, you'll understand why the derivatives and the paper pushing market is so valuable to these folks.
Yeah. So I would feel much better about it if I saw, I don't know, let's say 20 countries each owning 0.5%. That's what would really make me want to get excited about it. And we're talking about all this, and what we're really having is a shareholder meeting, which brings us right back to the whole notion that we're talking to Bitcoin like it's a stock, not like it's gold, or if it's like the dollar. No one talks about who owns the dollar. Of course, they probably say the United States, but a lot of people have dollars. We're talking about one guy owning an asset that's supposed to be for the world, and no, you've got 6 billion people in the world that just don't care about it. And that's me. That's my primary thing is. Um, I think Sailor's just a little too much. I'd like to see it spread across 20 countries, and it was disappointing when Germany got out. That's all I'll say.
Well, FX the folks that manage the FX reserves of major developed countries, it's going to take a while for I think that kind of level of adoption to occur. I do think it's going to occur. Just like we saw kind of a pivot from U.S. Treasuries being the primary reserve asset to gold. I think that Bitcoin will, become part of that. But number one, it's got to get a lot bigger, right? And the way that it gets bigger, obviously, is a higher price. So, just kind of ballpark, I don't think that it even becomes a discussion until 500,000 Bitcoin or 1,000,000 Bitcoin. That's when it starts to become big enough for those FX managers. Because remember, what an FX reserve really is a national savings. You the leader, whether it be a democracy or an autocracy, you have a pile of national savings. And the whole point, the reason they had put them in US Treasuries, one of the points was to preserve purchasing power because we were in a 50-year bond bull market, and there was interest being paid in a hard, quote unquote, a hard currency, at least relative to the other ones, right? So it was a good store value for that time period. But then we started to default, like what we did with Russia. We defaulted on our obligations that they held in U.S. Treasuries. And, we're starting to do things with Iran, right? But Iran is not the first. We have been blowing up entire economies with the dollar for decades. I mean, it's, well-known phenomenon. So that is, kind of shifting away from centralized assets, which, by the way, that bull market, that 50-year bull market is over, right? We have broken that trend. And possibly going into a 50-year bear market, if you believe the interest rate cycle theory people. So it's definitely not going to be that, right? I think the U.S. Treasury, it'll be part of reserves, but it's not going to be what it was. And right now, in the early part, right, it's been gold. And gold has been that kind of store of value that no one can seize, that holds its value, in real, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to preserve purchasing power in real goods and services, just like you, the individual, right? When you buy Bitcoin. So I think it'll just take time. I think Bitcoin's got to get a lot bigger. I think it will happen, but it could be, 5, 10, 15 years out if there is not a crisis. If you get a crisis, a precipitating event where it becomes kind of required, out of necessity, then I think that's a different prospect.
Let's get Dark in here, and then
Whew.
Dark, how are you?
Oh, good, man. Top of the day to you. State, I don't know what to say to you, man. You're missing the plot here. Bitcoin represents the separation of money and state. I do not want to see 20 nation states hodling Bitcoin. I do not want to see the elite pedophiles that got us into this absolute crap show that we're in right now back in charge of whatever, right? I totally disagree, right? Bitcoin is the people's money, it's sovereignty, right? It enables me and Puncher and Terrence and Chad and Anon and everybody else, Robert, to transact peer to peer without the permission of any state, of any group of people that may decide for whatever reason that they don't want me transacting. So, man, talk about missing the plot. And Robert, to your point, look, there's no 50-year bear market in bonds coming. If we get even a mild bear market from here, you will see uh, debt expense, interest expense begin to eclipse our tax receipts. Like that can't happen. If that happens, it's checkmate for the entire system
Yeah,
and the entire illusion.
we're
Go ahead,
already
Robert.
at 3.5 billion per day. B with a billion with a B. So yeah, I mean the interest outlays are already becoming untenable. Then you have people talking about a Fed rate hike when the vast majority of our debt is being rolled over into the cash market basically in T-bills. Right, you get a Fed rate hike or two, that just blows out that 3.5 billion to 3.7. Right, and what does that do? It increases the deficit, which means more bonds have to be issued, and that's how you get into a really untenable position.
Yeah, that's a death spiral, right? That's the bond death spiral that is inevitable unless they cut rates towards zero. So if you just look at the incentives, they have only one place to go. But at the same time, they can't help themselves but get involved in foreign wars that don't protect our country, that have nothing to do with us. And they do that because that helps the corruption in the military industrial complex and other financial industrial complex. Look, man, we're staring down the barrel of peak fiat. What does peak fiat means? It means peak force, right? Everything that's happening is based on corruption, force, right? Like everybody's getting over, the system's being looted, the treasury's being looted, and you're talking about, oh, I want those people to get Bitcoin. Now, look, Bitcoin is money for your enemies. And I can't stop them from getting it. But if I had my choice, the last people in the world I want owning Bitcoin are the people that got us into this mess in the first place.
Because fiat is trust, right? And for a while there was trust, but there is no. What happens when that trust starts to erode? Then there's only one thing left, which is force and violence.
I would wonder how many people in here would be disappointed though if 20 different countries got in, because now we're placing morals on this. Um, I thought a lot of people were happy when they learned that Iran was transacting in Bitcoin and a lot of other things. I mean, I thought money was for everyone, not just
I
America.
just said that, and I think the difference is that Iran doesn't have a central bank, or at least is not part of the U.S. central banking system
But
or the Western banking
I
system,
think most people
right?
would. I think most people would be pretty happy though if they heard that the ECB and the Bank of China
Oh,
just went in with 50 billion, and then the Saudis came in with 120 billion. That would be pretty exciting.
for
And
you, for you, but don't speak for me. I want to be as far away from Ursula and her band of psychopathic crazies as possible.
yeah,
The last thing I want to do is be aligned with Ursula.
I know, but that's money. That's what money does. I mean, money is for everyone to use. This gets back to the dick pics on the blockchain clogging up the mempool. You know, is it? Are we going to start censoring who can have it? We're placing morals on the dollar. I mean, on money.
We've
That's the
already
problem with
censored. The
it.
dollar is fully censored. The U.S. government just seized hundreds of millions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars from Russia, hundreds of millions of dollars from Iran. It's being seized every day. So I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I have a
Hey,
question.
I would love it if the Saudis came in with $1 trillion, and I think a lot of people wouldn't hear. Also,
But what are you going to
it's
do?
just a fact.
Yeah, but they're just going to sell it.
No, they're going to buy it.
Okay, so
100.
what are they going to do when they? Because remember, Bitcoin is a credit default swap on the U.S. dollar. Okay, so when their currency goes to zero, because their currency is pegged to the dollar, and assuming everybody piles into Bitcoin, they got to sell it.
Just like
Just
gold,
like just
just
like what
like
you're seeing happening with gold. Exactly.
exactly right. They are getting pushed. They are getting pressured immensely over there. Those rich, oil-rich countries that have huge, sovereign wealth fund or large FX reserves, they are all pegged to the dollar. Their export revenues in, the dollar revenues they usually rely on are gone because the strait is closed. So what do they do to cover their existing liabilities? They sell out of that pile of FX reserves, like US Treasuries, like gold. It would be Bitcoin too, right? If Bitcoin had been adopted by them, they'd be selling Bitcoin too.
I'll
And
say this:
it would be Bitcoin first.
if you are afraid that the Saudis would then sell it, then maybe if you're a Saudi or you're in China, you're worried that Sailor's going to sell. So it's both ways. I'll tell you this: Bitcoin
Great.
would be at 150 if the Saudis announce they're going to work in 1 trillion. And I'll also say this: we've been hearing the same thing since about 2016. If the girl isn't into you, she just isn't into you, and Bitcoin should be higher, and it's not.
Dude, where were you in 2013 when you could buy this for $100? What are you talking about? Like, there's people on here that have $100 Bitcoin that are looking at 60,000 and saying, man, I don't know what I could have invested in that would have given me that return. So
That's not what.
I know you look, I get it. You're
That,
new to the party. You don't really
I'm not.
understand
Dark,
what
I'm
Bit.
dark,
not.
dark, dark
I
state,
was
guys. Let me
I
let me
was a minor.
hang on, state. Let me hop in here for a second.
I was
I've
a
got to no,
minor
no,
with
no, state,
26
state,
S19Js.
state. I need to know something, man. You've said you were in here in 17, all the way to minor. Can you take me
State, I
through your
wanted to mention
journey?
something about just war in general, because generally speaking, war is good for business, right? Chaos is good for business. Disruption, high prices, because at the end of the day, there's the incentive. That's when the
Tico, hey,
people at the top rape and pillage the
Tico,
hardest.
can you not hear me?
So I want to ask
He
you,
can't
is
hear you, bro. Tico, so Chattel was speaking when you had
So I
started
just kicked
speaking.
Tico. I just kicked you down because I.
Oh shit.
So
Boot him.
anyway, state seriously, can you please take me through 2017, all through your journey? I don't care about size if you want to talk in percentages, but your journey is really, I think, what we don't really understand, because what you seem to be citing is arguments against this. We would look at as arguments for, and I think your perspective is valuable given you're not a newbie. You've been around this for 8 years. Can you just start us in? Why didn't you come in 13 like Dark said? When did you first hear about it? Take us through the journey for 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, I told everyone earlier that I had read Creature from Jekyll Island in 2003 and The House of Morgan in 2004, and a handful of others. I love finance and I love scandals in finance, and that's what kind of got me interested in it. First time I heard about Bitcoin was in 14 with Mt. Gox, and I'm thought, wow, that's interesting, and thought nothing of it. Then I started hearing some rumblings when somebody I knew said, my son wants to build a Bitcoin miner. Do you know how to do that? And I said, I have no idea. That's when I got into it, about October of 2017. And then that's when the CME announced that they were going to put the futures, and it started on January 1, 2018, and it was downhill once the futures went online. I started buying like crazy. I think I don't know, I had a lot of Bitcoin on that downslope from 2018 to 2019, and then held it. I was then a miner. I had at one point 26 S19Js. So I was also a miner, so I was invested in. I was really into it. I thought this is the money. This is the money for the world. It's going to be great. I understand, and you can even see my pinned tweet on how the decay of fiat works and into money supply growth. I lived through the great financial crisis. I know all about that. I remember Occupy Wall Street. So I'm 55 years old, so I have seen it, and what I watched it evolve into is just something. Being a trader, um, if you're expecting something to happen and it doesn't happen, that's your signal. And that's what I meant by, if the girl isn't into you, she isn't into you. I expected by now that Bitcoin would be more adopted globally. The Chinese shut off their miners in the summer of 2024, 2023, something like that. I can't remember. So China's out of the picture. Germany then sells theirs in 2023, and now we got an American guy who's coming in and he's taken up 4%. And I just thought, you know what? This is like Berkshire Hathaway. This is like a stock. This is just another $1 trillion Nasdaq stock owned by one guy, and I was seeing no adoption. Then we got the ETFs. That was your other signal. It popped, and now the public doesn't really want it. So Bitcoin has competition for fiat, and now we got this IPO this IPO thing. So Bitcoin is fighting a lot of things, including funds going elsewhere, interest in it is going into fund fiat things, and I 100% understand the principle of the lock 21 million. That's a beautiful thing about it and what got me into it. And I'm just seeing that I think, my opinion, Bitcoin is the Ford, a 1934 Ford Model A of money. I think there's going to be better systems out there, and I'm just wondering why aren't the trillions of dollars flowing into this great investment if it's so great and it's just not happening? That's basically it.
So look, that's a great question. If that's how we open the show, and that is a great question. But my question to you is, okay, I get your perspective. I appreciate that. What are you hoping to accomplish by sitting here, or what are you hoping to learn? Other because that question, I please we keep that in the room. But what are you hoping to learn in this space?
So I came in and people were I said I can people were wondering what's wrong with Bitcoin, and I said, from somebody who was a Bitcoiner and got out, here are my views for what people may be seeing. And unfortunately, it sounds a lot like Peter. And I knew that I was going to get booed off the stage, and I knew it was going to be abrasive, but I thought, I'm not here to.
Hang on. Are you sure about that? I don't think it's abrasive. And by the way,
Okay.
guys, I apologize. I have a meeting coming in right now that I got to do, Terrence. So I'm going to drop. But State, this is to me has been a very friendly, respectful dialogue, and I appreciate your insight and everybody else. Everyone else, I'll talk to you tomorrow. But cheers.
State, could I jump in a little bit? I think with the introduction of the ETFs, we brought a whole new, different type of buyer into Bitcoin that didn't have the mindset that the long-term hodlers had, which was meaning they were looking for the next hottest thing. They were more speculative. So to me, it's no surprise at all that we popped all the way up to 125, 126, and then dropped down once the new shiny rock came around, right? Because people are jumping from
Well,
investment to
the numbers
investment.
don't suggest that, Anon.
No?
According to Checkmate, apparently
Okay.
the
Well,
ETF is some of the strongest hodling cohort out there, if not the strongest hodling cohort off. And that's
What
based off
when it
reasoning that it's a passive investment vehicle. So people are buying the ETF for set it and forget it. They're not selling the shares.
okay.
So
I was reading
when it did change was South Korea. When South Korea really started to take off the momentum, the AI, the memory, right? When that started to shift, that was really when the divergence kind of happened, not the ETF.
Okay, so what have been the biggest outflows? Because I was reading there was like huge ETF outflows recently over the past few months. Where's the downward coming from? Is it just retail buyers of spot Bitcoin? Where's it coming from?
Are you asking? I don't know. I don't care. I just look at
Anyone
the
on
price.
stage?
I,
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a
I
question.
don't think any of us know.
That was a question for me. What?
Well, it was originally aimed at you, but it kind of got derailed because I guess my premise is wrong.
Okay. Can you rephrase that? I heard something about spot. I was listening, but I heard a bunch of people.
Yeah, the premise of what I was saying is that I think that we saw a big jump in price from new buyers that were more speculative than the long-term holders, and that's why once all these IPOs and AI has been sucking the air out of the room, they've moved to a new asset because it's more interesting to them as a speculative asset. Mars disagrees, so I'm just curious, like how you see that, or if you
Well,
really do believe there's something
So,
fundamentally
so,
wrong with the
no, to
asset.
clarify my position, I do think AI has sucked wind out of Bitcoin's number go up momentum 100%. I was just saying that I don't think it's related to ETFs. I think the ETF hodlers have been buying it and forgetting about it without selling it, according to Checkmate. That's his analysis.
Gotcha. So, State, do you think there's something fundamentally wrong with the asset, or do you think that people are chasing hype?
one person I follow is Michael Cow, and he's an energy analyst, trader, and he talks a lot about commodity inelasticity and elasticity. And he said early on, which I didn't fully grasp, was that Bitcoin is very inelastic. whereas a lot of commodities are inelastic, which means that they're sensitive to demand and supply. So I would argue that one of the things that locks Bitcoin in is obviously the hodlers. Now I know people that hold Bitcoin, and I say that Bitcoin is never ever going to zero, and it's probably never going to get down to 20,000 because you have the hodlers who are going to die on the hill. They're just never going to give up. They would rather see it go to nothing than it kind of admit a loss. And so that's one of those things that enhances inelasticity, as it doesn't um, respond. We haven't even gotten into the whole notion of what's going on between custody of the ETFs and the exchanges. That's a whole nother operation, along with the basis trade that goes on with the futures and spot. That is another huge manipulative mechanism that dark side can probably answer to, but that is a huge suppressive process, that basis trade that goes on with futures and spot, and also the sloshing of the
Well,
of the.
but wait. They're shorting futures and buying spot.
That's correct, and then you earn money on the spread. But what that does
Right.
is that locks price, and what you have is your margin.
Well, it's market neutral.
It is, but what's happening is they're not going net directly long. They're hedged, because what they're doing is that institutions are more than happy to capture anywhere from a safe 4 to 12% than they are to shoot for the moon. Whereas the hodler is more like, I can't wait to this thing 4x's and 10x's. It's going to be so great. That's not how billions and trillions think about money. They think about basis points and a safe 8%. That's how they do it. So they're more than happy locking this thing in an ice, and that's what happens in airline.
But how is that suppressing the price if it's market neutral?
Because you have people you have the biggest money in the world that are not willing to go directionally long. They're willing to
But
they're willing
So
to
you don't even
capture
know
a
how it
spread.
works. State, you're right, but not for the right reason. What that does when you do the basis trade, that enables you to go into the spot market when the market's thin because you're long spot Bitcoin and short futures and absolutely trash the price, right? It gives you the power to create massive downward momentum, right? That's why Jane Street is long so much of the ETF and short so much of the futures, right? It's that same basis trade, right? Again, this is just manipulation. It's peak fiat. I don't know why we don't rename the show Fiat Today, and we can go all into the details of how fiat doesn't work, right? Like, again, you're right, but not for the right reason.
But
Now,
I would
hold on, the setup that you're describing, right, where you have the basis trade on in real size, what is it going to lead to? Eventually, someone's got to put a bid into the perpetual. Right now, the funding rates are negative. Okay, so there's just no bid in the perpetual to help them put on the basis trade. There is no basis trade. Okay, now at some point, if that begins to unravel and there will be no bid in the perpetual futures, right? And whoever has the trade on Chinese, whoever has the trade on long perp short Bitcoin or long perp short IBIT gets absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, because the bases can widen, right?
Of course.
it,
And if you don't believe me, go look what happened in long-term capital management to the guys who did the basis trade. And they were the smartest guys in the room,
and
arguably smarter than you and me, right? So look, man, these games, and they are games, and I'm glad you pointed out that when the CME listed, cash settled futures, Bitcoin got destroyed. Of course it did. They're fiat fuckery. Like, these are the absolute total scumbags on the planet Earth.
but
Right? That's the system. Their system is to fuck you out of your money, your time, and your energy. And they don't care how they do it.
but
They will
um,
play by
but
any rules
dark.
possible.
I'll argue this: it's also controlling the girl you're going after. That is the point, is that it is working for them. And you're right, the basis trade has been arbed out. It is not there anymore. But now we have to talk about the amount of custody that's sloshing in between the ETFs and the exchanges. But never mind that. The point is that there's just not the billions and trillions that are willing to go directionally long here, because I think there's a lot of competition for other fun things.
And there will be until there isn't, right? Like this, remember how fiat works. It's all great until the whole fucking thing comes crashing down, like it did in 08, 09, like it did in 2000, like it did in 98. Like financial crisis is a mechanism of the system. Like it's built into the system. Now you may like you say you're 55 years old, you should be old enough to remember what it looks like when the whole system breaks. And they have to change the rules and they have to recapitalize the system. We're $39.5 trillion in debt, right? Like just go to fundamentals. Interest rates are going up at the very time when we need them to go down, which means there's not going to be enough capital to pay the interest on the existing debt. At the same time, because the system is so corrupt, we find it necessary to go start a war in the Persian Gulf and to see to it that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And that becomes really inflationary, not just for oil, but for food, distillates, and all the other products that become byproducts of petrochemicals, plastics, everything. So you have a perfect storm coming. Now you can sit back and talk about AI and talk about circular bullshit that's going on. And look, it's all bullshit. Like what you're pointing to is a big pile of bullshit and saying they don't like your girl. And what I started by telling you is stay away from my girl. By the way, it's Mrs. Lightside's birthday today, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, no, stay away from my girl. Right? If your girl is SanDisk or Micron or Nvidia, that's your girl. Just realize you don't own anything. Right? You don't own Nvidia, you don't own Micron, you don't own SanDisk, you own nothing. They own it. And they give you some claim, some paper claim that you're allowed to trade. And that's the way that system works. And when the system breaks, they're going to take your paper claim and say, sorry, casino closed. So just that's the nature of what we own. What we own, our girl is a bearer asset. Our girl comes home with us at night. Our girl gets in bed with us at night. She's sweet. She's beautiful. Your girl's a pig. Just saying.
Investors like pigs.
I mean, what I'd say is, you sound like you've been around Bitcoin long enough to know that it goes through periods where people are absolutely disinterested in it. No money's coming to it, and there's nothing new here. I guess I'm not sure why you're fundamentally bearish now using that argument when we've spent years in this exact same type of sentiment throughout the last 9 years, right? So I don't see anything. I don't see the story of Bitcoin any different than it was in 2018, 2019, or 22 to 23. You know,
Yeah, no, I don't either. I think Bitcoin is probably going to be in a range between $50,000 and $150,000 into perpetuity, like most commodities. And if that's fine. But it's not exactly getting taken over by the world. So I think it's going to act more like crude oil. And so I think as the Brits say, I think I'll get me coat. So I appreciate you having me on here, Terrence. Thanks.
In the
Thanks for
comments
coming
section,
up, State.
there's a guy
I
named
remember feeling like Bitcoin might not ever sustain above 10,000. Remember how that was such a barrier, being like we might just be stuck in these like high single digit thousands for years. Might take and then all of a sudden, poof, another bull market. Oh,
In the comments section here, there's a guy named Jason saying that the last 13 to 14 days we've seen consecutive massive outflows from the ETF. So I'm looking for a source on that, but that's just one comment we're seeing.
Also, what's like Nvidia at? Someone was telling me the other day it's like gonna hit 6 trillion market cap.
You
If
know,
you
I
just
looked.
well, if you just size Bitcoin up to other other investments, it's still quite tiny. A lot of room to grow.
Hey guys, let's incorporate Blanca, and I think BitPetro is now up here. And then I'm going to have to take it around the horn because I'm going to need to jump here soon. But this has been a great conversation. I also want to say hi to Paul and Hath. But let's start with you, Blanca, and then we'll go to Petro.
Yeah, hey, what's up, guys? Just reflecting on the conversation. I mean, I think people look at Bitcoin as some asset that's going to trend and follow some sort of typical price action, and it's not really. It's an insurance policy. I mean, you're buying something that is going to move very fast, very quickly, and break a lot of models. So there's really not a coherent argument against owning it when you know what's going on in the system. And so I'll just leave that there.
Thanks, Thomas. How's it going, BitPetro?
Good guys. Yeah, look, this is a I guess evergreen topic for Bitcoin. It's slow and then it moves fast, and there are certainly cycles. So I think that it, trying to subscribe to a particular model is not really good. I make that argument in the book that maybe the models need to be forecasting models from the perspective of like regional and local things, particularly around mining and around policy. But to try to put some kind of like, the price is going to be such and such at 4 p.m. tomorrow. I mean, I put that akin to trying to listen to like buzzing bees and road noise. It's all complete noise, and really the seismic like notes, deep hertz like notes. Those are the real. That's the real signal. But that takes years, maybe decades of study for you to really be able to tap into it and listen to those lower register notes that are the constant like signal that's around there, and you can see that with the way that it's behaving in the global south. I think that's still pretty evident. That's always been my understanding of Bitcoin. Is like, hey, look, this is not money necessarily that's going to make a big impact in the first world, because the first world has existing banking rails that work just fine for what people are doing. And until there is a regime change, because we're out of some kind of like whatever this is that we're in this fear and like panic mode that the markets seem to be in, until we get out of that, there's really not a fundamental reason for Bitcoin to be growing other than maybe AI. And the AI, steam has kind of started slowing down a little bit. I hope to do something about that. I think there is a synergy to be had with energy and balancing the energy consumption of AI with Bitcoin mining as a larger utility trend. But let's face it, guys, that's like long-term thinking. That's not going to affect the market in the medium to near term in any way, shape, or form. What I do see is, we're starting to grow up and look at at least from the energy and oil and gas side, we're starting to see it as an engineering tool and maybe not a get rich quick tool. And that's positive, but it's not going to happen soon.
Hath, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so much stuff was going on. I'm not going to backtrack too much, but just a word of advice. Nobody likes ants at their picnic. Peter Schiff persona is an ant who really wants to be at our picnic. State seemed to have picked up Schiff's chemtrail and is trying to, invade our picnic. So there's some simple steps you can do, in my opinion, and one of them is to make sure that you phrase it, that Bitcoin is for anyone as opposed to Bitcoin is for everyone, because Bitcoin is not for state. So, but that's okay. It's for anyone. That's kind of where I'll just leave it. So thanks for the space.
Thanks, Hath. Paul, how are you doing today?
What's up, guys? Hope y'all are doing well. I was gonna mention something. I mean, State said that Bitcoin is the Model T, and I'm thinking to myself, what characteristic of digital money is he waiting on to come forward? Because I mean, in my short time, as I grow in the space, I realize, oh, that was thought of. Oh, that was thought of. Yeah, that was thought of. I mean, it almost has a spiritual aspect to it. Um, so, I mean, here we are in a time where there's over 2.5 million cryptocurrencies, and I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin is still the Lamborghini. I mean, we're not waiting on something else. So, I was just going to ask him, what characteristic is he waiting on? Because it always blows my mind when somebody calls it a Model T. Maybe because it's slow, but that's a feature, not a bug, right?
Sam, it's because of you we started this conversation. Apparently, I didn't hear your space over the weekend. How's it going?
It's going good, Terence. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Saturday morning space. Everyone was pretty chilled. It was a very interesting conversation about adoption, and Chad came along. Um, the David guy that he mentioned added interesting sort of conversation starters. And yeah, I come up to sort of pick up on where Chad had sort of introduced that topic, but it wasn't the day we went in a different direction. I just state for the record, I try to understand everyone's perspective and opinion, but people like State, I just can't. I'm just fundamentally in a different place than people like that. And just finally to say, Terence, Thaler's article about the four ideologies, yeah, really interesting article and thought provoking, but they're not mutually exclusive. Like I can see parts of me in all of those ideologies, and as my journey continues, I try to be more pragmatic. Like we can all have opinions, but ultimately the protocol is the North Star, right? So yeah, maybe another day, Terence, we could talk about adoption. It's something that I'm really interested in. I've studied it. I've worked in it. It's I'm not monetized. I'm not shilling anything, but I just think it's a really interesting conversation about how technologies emerge and adopt, and the different personality types. It's interesting from an orange pilling perspective. So maybe another day. And finally, happy birthday, Mrs. Lightside.
Yeah, happy birthday to Mrs. Lightside. Hey, Sam, real quick. So in that article, Saylor did say that obviously those four categories aren't mutually exclusive. When you were reading those, was there one that you identified with more than the others?
So to be like, I could kind of let my ego answer that, Terence, but if I was being honest, I see my progression the longer I'm around. And like I'm the first to admit that I'm still learning. I hope to learn for years to come. And I see parts of myself in all of those ideologies. The interesting thing for me, Terence, was that I looked at the ideologies, and it made me realize that it's very easy for us to become, dogmatic and opinionated and sort of fight with other factions. And so I guess the takeaway for me was a little more pragmatism and try to maybe understand where other people come from. But ultimately, yeah, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but ultimately the protocol is the North Star. Like we can have our opinions and our ideologies, but Bitcoin's the boss, Terence, right? It doesn't change. We change. We can have different ideologies, but it doesn't change. That's the beauty of the thing. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, you in typical fashion, Sam, you didn't answer my question at all. But thank you. Still appreciate the words. Hey, Puncher, are you back here or are you on a Zoom? We're just closing out the show. Wanted to get some of your final thoughts, and we look forward to joining your Friday space. Do you guys hear Puncher, or is it just me?
No, I can't hear him. I see he's coming off mute though.
Yeah, I don't know what is wrong with him. Like when he comes up to co-host, he gets rugged, and half the time he leaves, he gets rugged. Something's going on over there. We see your emojis, Puncher, but anyways, if you're able to come off speaker, that'd be great. But if not, we know you're busy. Sean, let's check in with you. Any last final thoughts before we close her down?
Yeah, I think with the last update with the Apple iPhone app, I think everything else, the browser and Android options, I've been having problems too. But I'll just say I want to thank State for coming up, because it takes a little bit of courage to admit, that you're not a Bitcoiner and you're coming into the Bitcoin space. The thing I appreciate and why I'm saying this is, unlike the Peter Schiffs of the world, he has 3 or 4 reasons that he's willing to debate on why he feels, and it is emotional on his defense, where he has reasons why he's not a Bitcoiner anymore. Whereas Peter Schiff always goes back to there's no value, and he thinks that's the end all. So shout out to State, and appreciate the conversation. Lauren, we miss you. Bye, Lauren. And yeah, keep stacking sets.
Yeah, those are always my favorite conversations, bringing in people who can be critical or think a different way. And it helps us sort of straw man our conviction. It's easy to laugh because we've come so far and we understand. And most of us have been studying monetary history and whatnot, but others just haven't gotten there yet. But at least they're here, right? They're at least a step better than the pre-coiners who are just oblivious and sort of ignorant to what's going on. So they may not be getting all the right information just yet, but that's where we all start. All right, I think Dark jumped. He had to go take Mrs. Lightside out. She's going to get her nails done, and I think they're doing a couples massage. And I don't know what else they're going to go shoot some guns, probably. Um. Oh, Richard. Who's this Richard Lap? Richard, I don't think we've seen you here. And he's gone. All right, Anon, back to you. And then it looks like we're the last. We're the last at the party.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get more of a definitive reason for state's disillusionment with the asset. I heard somewhat of like a price or a centralization risk thing, but I didn't hear a fundamental reason. I will give the devil his due, though. I did hear him talk about one critique of Lightning, and I think as a consumer, Lightning is great. If you're buying something, it's really easy. But from the merchant side, I just set up a Lightning node last week. Finding your peers, setting up your channels, funding your channels, finding how to work that was very, very prohibitive. I don't think that's something that most merchants would set up if they don't have an internal IT department. So I do think on the back end, Lightning has a ways to go, but on the front end, it's great.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think the technology aspect is really interesting because some outsiders think, Bitcoin is really for people that are technologists or into computer science or coders and whatnot. And what I've discovered is that the majority of us aren't at all, not even close. But Bitcoin solves so many problems and promises so much in its simplicity and and what it can do, that we're like, wait a minute, how is this working? How is this possible? How can that happen? And so we want to learn, we want to investigate, and so I think it's funny to see all the people that that isn't their wheelhouse, start to figure out how to run nodes and how to multi-sig and how to run lightning channels and how to start lotto mining or hashing. And there's just all these things that I feel like in other areas of life or industries, you wouldn't go that deep. You would just accept it and you'd be like, hey, I can drive my car. I don't need to know how the combustible engine works. I just press this pedal and it goes. And maybe in the future, that's how Bitcoin will happen, because we're just sitting here sort of at this really weird bridge period that we just, fortunately or unfortunately, happen to be living in, where all of this stuff is developing. And I always just go back to the internet and I just think, man, I remember going through 12.2 dial up and then 14.4 dial up. I remember running a server at my own house until the maid kept kicking the plug out. I remember literally buying the book titled "The Dummy's Guide to HTML," right? And they didn't even call it coding back then. But I was just so curious, and I'm like, how do you make a website? There was none of these easy things like Wix or whatever they have now. And of course, now you just vibe code. You just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, make it. Um, so I think we have to be a little forgiving of those that find the technology overwhelming. Sam, are you coming back again? You said goodbye. We saw you walk to the car, and now you're coming back to the front door.
Terence, I love that aspect of Bitcoin as well. That people who don't have a computer science background can just do that stuff. And look, whatever day we talk about this more about the technology adoption bell curve, it's not really so much about your background or your education. What the technology adoption bell curve shows us is that you could have studied art, but you're an innovator. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's the personality type more than your experience or your schooling, or so that's really interesting in terms of adoption. Most people here are innovators and early adopters. There's a handful of early majority, and there's none of the last two personality types are here yet. So that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm kind of passionate about.
Thanks, Sam. That time I think you got it right. All right, so I guess we're going to close the show up, but Lauren's not here, so it's going to be it's going to be a little bit of a buzzkill. It's going to be just a true rug. Sorry, guys. Oh, by the way, if you're still here, so I'm just scrolling down. I can't see everybody, but BTC Savant, you have not been up here in a long time. You should come join us. Nicole, I see you down there. K Bud, you need to join us. Coin Father, where have you been? Chris, I know you cannot join us. He's always busy. Let's see, Jason, Jesse. Boy, by the way, if those of you who are old enough, it's like Romper Room. I see you. I see you. Anyways, I can't keep scrolling, but I just want to invite some of you guys to come up and join the conversation. Oh, there's Marilyn. Yeah, Gen X. He's always here, but I know he's busy. All right, guys. See you tomorrow, same time. Later.